bro. We breaking that black barrier every single day, every weekend, 24/7. It does not matter.
Tell them what breaking the black barrier mean, man. What they look like?
What is black, man?
What is black?
Copper Color Productions, man. The Copper Color King Cash, Morals, and Money, man. Let's get it.
Black King, stand up for understand what black is. It's the essence, it's the culture. We've been on this earth, you heard? The Bronx was called for Apache. Huh? The Bronx was called for Apache, man. Oh, last breed, bro. We bringing it back, last breed.
Really forever flying in this bitch, man. For the ancestors, baby. For all the ancestors out there, baby.
Yeah. Yeah, Watagwan, man. Wagwan, y'all. Wagwan. What it do, chicken stew? Copper Color King. We back in this bad boy with some more good content today, y'all. You know, we spoke about the Mongol and Tarter invasion of America in the very first episode of this segment, in the very first video of this segment. And some of the things that we learned throughout this process is that at one point in time, there was a group of copper-colored peoples who came upon the shores of South America. And when they got there, this man by the name of Mongol Capac, Mongol Yanga Capac, and Koyamama, they established the empire that we know today as the Inca. They established the Inca. The people we know today as the Inca. And with them came sun worship, the knowledge of erecting magnificent towers and architectures of out of this world, things that we haven't seen, you know, that were left undiscovered throughout the years. Now, first things first, the number one thing I always like to put out there is that we know ancient America is the true old world. Yeah, I mean, there were tribes of peoples here way before the arrival of any Aztec, the arrival of any Inca. You know, these people came to the Americas way after. There were already people dwelling here, right? I like to call it under the tents of Shem, right? You had many different tribes, right? People that they referred to people as giants. You had cannibals, serpent worship, sun worship, already here before the Incas got here. When they got here, they pulled the same tactics that Genghis Khan used when he was dominating Asia. You know, to invade, conquer, assimilate, right? Bow down, you know, get down to lay down. And if you don't, well, then we go to war. And in that process, the word that they preached to the people in South America was that it was in their benevolent right? The sun and moon god wanted the people to convert and worship the Inca, just like the Khan. So many different similarities. And some of the things that we also learned throughout this process too is that you had Tartarian peoples here in many different parts of the Americas. I'm talking about California. I'm talking about Mexico, right? We already covered Tolomeco. We didn't even get into that one deeply yet because I got a real good one coming soon for that one. The temples that they found over there that they like to refer to as mosques, right? And then another one that's very, very interesting is the Queen Khalifa story. The Queen Khalifa story. The idea that the peoples who brought that story over here were Tartars, right? And what makes this one so interesting is the fact that Tartaria's emblem is a griffin, right? I'm gonna pause it right here. This right here is a painting, a depiction of a royal member of the Tartarian crown, right? That's one. And then when we continue, we have this flag right here, right? Now, and people could Google this themselves. I'm not going to go too deep into it right now because I have a whole episode planned out specifically for this, right? But the story with Queen Khalifa is that she's associated with a griffin, right? A griffin. And the Tartarian flag has a griffin imprinted on it. Now, that's just one of the legends to that backstory with Queen Khalifa. But we got so much more. I mean, even the Aztecs have links to the Tartars. And as we continue throughout this book that we read, and I just want to teach people and I want to educate people that, you know, number one, there's a reason why all these different peoples wanted to come here to America, especially for the Tartars, right? Siberia alone does not have the correct geographical landscape to fund a great empire. And this is why the Mongols based their entire bases off of invading. You know, that's how they grew. They invaded different lands, you know, acquired different minerals and different commodities, different things that helped their empire develop. And coming here to America was one of the things that, in my opinion, was one of the things that some of these Tartarian tribes did after they were disbanded. You know, they came here to America, and what they did was they brought their civilization, their religion, their very ways of life from Tartary over here to America. Because when you look at the origins of Genghis Khan and his folks and Mongol Capac and the Inca, is real similar. And specifically in this video today, what we're going to talk about is basically the Incan royal bloodline. The Incan royal bloodline and how it went from one emperor to the next, and the different connections that the author makes in this book to the Mongol Empire, the Great Khan, or shall I say the Golden Horde, right? And speaking of, I just want to touch bases on something real quick, right? What is a horde, right? This is a good word that I learned, because even myself, I didn't even know the definition of this word myself and how deep it goes into this entire story here, right? But what is a horde? So a horde, right, is a large unorganized group of individuals, right? A political subdivision of Central Asian nomads, a people or tribe of nomadic life. What does it mean to be a nomad? Right? Well, a nomad are people without fixed habitation who regularly move to and from areas. They move around from place to place. And these Tartars, these Mongols, were known to move in hordes. And this is why they call it the Golden Horde. These Tartars, these Mongols, they moved in hordes, right? And just real quick, some backstory on the Golden Horde. It was originally a Mongol and later a Turkicized Khanate established in the 13th century and originating as the northwestern sector of the Mongol Empire. With the division of the Mongol Empire after 1259, it became a functionally separate Khanate. It is also known as Kipchak Khanate, or as Ulis of Jochi being the last ruler. After the death of Batu Khan, the founder of the Golden Horde, in 1255, his dynasty flourished for a full century, until 1359. Though the intrigues of Nogai instigated a partial civil war in the late 1290s, right? It was a civil war amongst these people. This is extremely important. I want y'all to pay attention to this part, because the Inca, the ending of their great empire ended pretty much with a civil war, right? Even those similarities, we could continue to make them for days, but let's continue on this Golden Horde. So yeah, a civil war in the late 1290s. The Horde's military power peaked during the reign of Uzbek Khan, who adopted Islam. The territory of the Golden Horde at its peak extended from Siberia in Central Asia to parts of Eastern Europe, from the Urals to the Danube in the west, and from the Black Sea to the Caspian Sea in the south, while bordering the Caucasus Mountains and the territories of the Mongol dynasty known as the Ilkhanate. The Khanate experienced violent internal political disorder known as the Great Troubles. This is between 1359 and 1381, Before it briefly united under Tokamayatash, however you pronounce that, he was a Khan, ruler of the Golden Horde, who briefly succeeded in consolidating the blue and white hordes into a single polity. Also, they had different hordes. Make note of that. Different hordes. Not only the Golden Horde, but they had a blue and white horde as well. Check this part. However, soon after 1396, invasion of Timur, the founder of the Timurid Empire, the Golden Horde broke into smaller Tartar Khanates, which declined steadily in power. Now, why is this important? Now, for those who pay attention to history, if you pay attention to history, then you should know when the Spaniards came here to the Americas, South America was left undiscovered by them. They didn't discover South America until Charles V came, right, and took over the Incan royalty. So that whole entire time between about 1200 and 13 to 1400, the Inca Empire was building in South America, left undiscovered by the colonial Spaniard empires, or by the Spaniards, shall I say. So that means once these people broke up into small Tartar tribes, smaller Tartar hordes, there's a huge possibility that some of these hordes or Tartar tribes, Tartarian tribes, could have migrated here to the Americas. They could have migrated here to the Americas. And I'm reading a book right now, right? The Voyages of Hernan de Soto in the Americas. And what they did was they went to Mexico. First, they was in Cuba, right, in the Caribbean islands. And then from there, they found their way to the Yucatan. And that's where they discovered the peoples that was people in that area at that time. Many different tribes and nations. Many different tribes and nations. So at this time, that means the Tartars, or these Tartarian tribes, these hordes, could have already been peopling the Americas. Hence the Incan Empire growing the way it did. You know, one of the biggest empires. It was so big that that's one of the main ones that they talk about in history till this day, right? But they don't talk about the Zopec peoples, right? Or the Sopec peoples, the Sopak, right? The peoples who were colonized by the Olmecs, by the Asiatic Olmecs, right? Many different tribes and nations here in the Americas. And how we back this up is we go into the historical documents. So give me a minute. If I can pull up the book, we'll dive into it real quick. And it's the Hernan de Soto. I might have to bring it another time, but it's a really good one. This is a really, really good one. Cause they talk about a lot in this. Right? The voyages of Hernan de Soto, or Hernando Cortez to Mexico. Right? They discovered Mexico first. And even in their discoveries, they state that they found copper-colored peoples of a darker skin complexion that look like the people of Ethiopia, or like the gypsies and stuff like that. We're gonna go over this book in a later segment, right? We're gonna break down this entire book because it's extremely interesting to know what some of these Spaniards encountered when they came here to the Americas. Is extremely interesting. All right, we're going back to the hordes, right? So that, yeah, like I said, that means these Tartars could have found their way to the Americas way before any Spaniard made it here, and could have been establishing their empires, bringing over this sun worship and their styles of conquest, you know, their ways and customs and whatever the case may be. Check this out. This part, I was reading this in the New Yorker, And I thought it was extremely interesting, right? Because look at what they say, right? They say the image of Mongols as brutes outlasted their conquests. In a volunteer play, they appear as wild sons of rapine, who set out to make this splendid seat of empire one vast desert like their own. Right? Who set out to make this splendid seat of empire one vast desert like their own. They are conquerors. These Tartarian nations, these Scythian nations, right? That's what we could call them. These Mongols, they like to conquer. The sons of Japhet, they are conquerors. They are invaders. So when they came over here to the Americas, it was technically them conducting a full-scale invasion. Right? Speaking of the hordes, right? Check this out. So this is from the book The History of the Tartars, right? From the earliest authentic history of Scythia, the conquest of the Mongol Tartars. And they talk about the many nations. You know, we went over this in the last one, you know, how they spoke about the swarthy, darker, ignorant nations, the darker, more ignorant Tartars, or whatever the case may be, right? They make mention of these hordes, though. They make mention of these hordes. And what do they say? We're going to find a part and we're going to read it. Let's see what they say. That's the thing with these books, man. There's so many different like ways that we can approach this stuff, you know, when we talking about it, when we gathering the information and the facts, whatever the case may be. But look, so even this one right here, they talking about Attila of the Huns, right, creating their own hordes. Ernak, the youngest and favorite son of Attila, retired subsequently with his own horde and his brother's followers into the heart of Lesser Scythia, where they were soon overwhelmed by a fresh torrent of invaders, the Igors, who, issuing from the icy regions of Siberia, finally extinguished the empire of the Huns. It's mad different hordes. So, showing this just to make it clear that these people normally moved in packs, right? In bunches, groups, nations. Some of them even being Moors, right? We know it even that much. Some of them even being Moors. The more swarthier, darker, ignorant nations, like they said. So, when we looking into it, we got to understand, like I said, these Incas could be Tartars, right? They could be the descendants of these earlier nations that we know that descend from the Scythians, right? Or the sons of Japheth. Sons of Japheth. That's what I like to call it. That's how I like to look at it, because it's the truth. At the end of the day, it's all about the bloodline. This stuff is all about the bloodline. Now, I'm not saying that all of the Tartar nations are children of Japheth. Now, you didn't miss much, sis. We litty. I'm not saying all of the Tartars are sons of Japheth, right? They're Asiatic. So we got to remember, when we looking at it in terms of Noah's children, we got to understand that Asiatic people are sons of Shem, right? They dwell in the tents of Shem. That's where the Asiatic peoples are. Asiatic Negroes. And that's why I say us Moors, the Moors, us darker skinned, copper colored people. These Tartars, man, these Incas, these Tartars, man, let's talk about it, man. Let's talk about it. Their royal bloodline. I want to get into it, man. So we back in the book. I forgot the name of this one. What's the name of it again? Let's go back up. We covered it in the last one, though. But yeah, the Mongol invasion of America, the Mongol and Tartar invasion of the Americas, Mexico, Peru, and Bogota, Natchez, and yeah, Ptolemaico. So what page was I at? Alright. We're going to talk about the Incan emperors and their origins. You know, how it went from one emperor to the next. just how things switched up over time. And even how it concluded, like I said earlier, if people paid attention when I was speaking about it, the same way that the Mongol Empire broke up, it's kind of similar to the Incan Empire. Civil war. It was all civil war. And that's what they kind of destroyed themselves from within. And we're going to talk about it. So what did it say? So the conquest of Mongol extended to the river Patacombo on the east, about 30 leagues. On the western side, 8 leagues, and 9 on the south. These territories were divided into 4 provinces, just like how the Khan divided it amongst his sons, right? Over each which he appointed an Inca as a viceroy, having many sons grown up fit to command, and in each of them established 3 supreme, just like the Mongols. Look what they say in the footnotes. The arrangement of the army, the arms, policy, and etc. it will be shown are precisely Mongol. So I ain't tripping. I'm not tripping. Like I say, man, it's all about speaking facts. And when we bringing these details to the channel or whatever the case may be, these hordes, just like the Mongols. So when we talking in terms of the Mongol Empire from start to finish, from their rise and until their fall, once they broken up into many different Tartar nations, they brought their ways and customs with them here to the Americas. That's the best analogy we could make of this situation. Because it's just all too similar. It's all too similar. What else? Grown up fit to command, and in each of them established 3 supreme councils of justice, war, and revenue. And over each an Inca was also appointed as a president. These institutions continued ever the same. After a long and adored reign, at the approach of the last period of life, Mongol Capac called together all his children and grandchildren. He told them that he was going to repose himself with his father, right? His father being the son. Till his eldest son, he left his empire and advised and charged them all to continue in the paths of reason and virtue, which he had taught them, until they followed him on the same journey, and that this was the only course by which they could prove themselves true children of the Sun, and as such be honored and esteemed. Let's make note, this is blasphemy. Brother speaking like he's a prophet, and this is what I mean. These children of Japheth, right? They bringing this sun worship over here to the Americas, right? Not really living in the true ways of the Most High, and getting an entire generation of people after him to follow in the same ways and customs, thus pretty much sabotaging a whole generation of people. Because what they did, they used these theories and this blasphemy to conquer the rest of the land. And they used that get down or lay down policy. He commanded his successor, whose name was Sinchi Roca, to govern his people with justice, mercy, piety, clemency, and care of the poor, and that when he should go to rest with his father the sun, he should give the same instructions and exhortations to his successor. Right? The Incas did not think to properly to disclose to the Incas when they really came from or where their true origin was. So they were not Indians, right? They just colonized the Indians and turned them into Inca worshippers, believers of the Khan. Inca being a Khan. Their views required a different method of proceeding. Mongol had ordained that no subject should have more than one wife, and she was to be of his own family. Also, that no man be permitted to marry till the age of 20 years, no woman under 16. The Incas were to have but one lawful wife, who was called Koya, and was always to be their sister, for the better preservation of the royal blood, to keep it in the royal bloodline. So what Mongol Capac wanted, and this is similar to the Khan, this is very, very similar to the Mongols. I'm telling y'all, go do the research, check it out yourself. He wanted the Indians, or the people who worship the Incas, or his Incas, right? They could only have one wife, and that wife they call Koya, just like the Mama Koya, who was Mongol's wife. And then that same woman also had to be the sister, so that way the baby can continue to push out that royal bloodline. They wanted to keep it in the blood and leave everybody else as outsiders. Very similar. Let's continue. When one of them was of the royal family, she was named a Pala, but if not, she was called a Maktuna, or a matron. Mongol left also many sons by his concubines. He died beloved by his subjects as a father, and was adorned by them as a demigod. Right? They made this man out to be a demigod. Right? This is the creation of idol worship over there in Peru, amongst the Incas, or amongst the people living amongst the Incas. Right? He was adorned and worshipped by them as a demigod. They embalmed his body and then honored him with innumerable sacrifices of all sorts of beasts, birds, and fruits. It is supposed that he reigned 30 or 40 years. The Indians attributed all of their laws, civil or religious, to Mongol Capac, and which they thought had been communicated to him by his father, the son. But their laws were either new or reformed from ancient times. Ancient times from where? Well, like I said, once we continue to go through the Archer and the Steep, and we talk about these Mongol Tartarian tribes, or whatever the case may be, we're gonna learn. We are going to learn about these laws and how they were also very similar to the Incan Dominion. How they wanted to keep the royal bloodline in the family, right? How they contributed everything that they believed in to the sun, because the Tartars, the Mongols, they were sun worshippers before converting to Islam. Some of them, they were sun worshippers. The Incas pretended that one of their kings was a great legislator. They say that he was a sovereign priest, and further that he was a renowned captain who conquered a great number of provinces and kingdoms. But with all these fine pretensions, they can give us no particulars either of his laws or sacrifices. Therefore, to escape from this labyrinth, they attribute everything to Mongol Capac, whether of the institutions or the foundation of their empire. These people know nothing else other than Mongol Capac. Ever since the arrival of Mongol Capac, he altered and changed the history of the Mongol empires of the Incan Empire for years to come, for the religious and belief system of the people in Peru as we speak till this day. Till this day, I met a lady from Peru, and I asked her about the Inca. And she told me that the last person that she pretty much knew of was Atahalpa. And from there, she counted them down all the way to Mongol Capac, but couldn't speak nothing else about the history of her country, the true history of her country. And it's crazy. It's crazy because this game that they played, right? Even though these people were copper colored, right? Like I said, not all skin is kin, right? Even though they could have been a part of these Moorish branches, right? These branches of black people with royalty. It doesn't defeat the purpose that they were conquerors of the many different aboriginal inhabitants of this land, right? And it's crazy to say that because it's not like any of these people over here did anything wrong, right? They was just living their life, right? Just living their life. You even have followers of the great serpent here in the Americas. So you know it's just crazy, man, but we're gonna continue. Let's continue, man. So what did it say? So Sinchi Roca, he was the successor of his father. This was the son of Mongol Capac. Right, so what does it say? In the footnotes it says, while Genghis Khan was promulgating his laws, a man of rank who had long wandered naked in the desert mysteriously appeared in the assembly and declared aloud that God had revealed to him that the son of Piuca should be sovereign of the whole earth. This was entirely credited by the Mongols. What did it say about Sinchi Roca? He was the successor of his father as the second Inca. He married his eldest sister, Mama Cora. He was a brave monarch and exceeded all men of his time in wrestling, running, casting stones, and other such accomplishments. He extended the empire by persuasion and kindness, never having to recourse to arms. He reigned many years and left a number of children by his wife and concubines. He succeeded by his eldest legitimate son, right? And this was Likwe Yuwampukwi, or Lokwe Yupakwani, or however you would pronounce it. He was the first who made use of arms against the natives. He made use of arms against the aboriginal inhabitants of Peru. He added to the empire of provinces of Parukar Kola and Hatun Kola as far as the Lake Titicaca, and adorned those conquests with public buildings, canals, high roads, a temple of the sun, and a house of consecrated virgins erected therein. Right? They were building these temples all over, and this is why you see a lot of that stuff over there now, and a lot of it is even buried in the rainforest, in the Amazon rainforest. But it's temples of sun worship temples all over South America. They are all over South America, and that's crazy, right? Stuff that they don't teach you in school. He was a wise and good monarch and was succeeded by his only son, born of his wife Mama Kava. And then the next one, this being the fourth emperor, being Mayata Capac. Mayata Capac had during his minority twice visited the provinces, but as no favors could be granted, nor edicts be issued except by the sovereign Inca, with the assent of his council, he now resolved on again making the tour of his dominions, and to increase them by further conquests, spreading out through South America and pushing further north. He therefore took the field with an army of 12,000 men and proceeded to the canal in the great marshes by Lake Titicaca, with the view to add the province to Coalo to his empire. The inhabitants were of being a gentle character, and the country flat. It appeared both a desirable and easy acquisition. The wonders which they had heard respecting the Incas made them accept him as their sovereign, and at first summons, the Inca proceeded to Cayavari, a country in which the people dwelt in separate and distant dwellings, there being no town. In this flat district there is but one mountain, which is a quarter of a league in height and in a form like a pestle pilon. So this was a tall mountain. They had no villages, no towns, but they were encountering peoples, different wandering peoples, and these people were conforming to the Inca, right? They were looking up to the Inca, right? And this was a part of their goal anyway, to stretch out, expand their empire, you know, and have all of these people under one rulership, right? Very, very similar to the Khan. That was the goal of the Mongols over there in Asia. That's what they was doing. So this is why I said, like, when we look at these similarities, we got to really pay attention. You got to think about it. They're bringing that same style and structure over here to the Americas, conquering people who already have religious belief systems and styles of worship, right? It's not like when they came over here, America's new. America is the true old world. Some of the things that are over here are older than some of the stuff that you have out east, right? Or in Europe, right? Like we went over in the mound building series. We have here in America a Neolithic and Paleolithic period. We have those things. It's not like in America we wasn't doing anything, like we was beating chest or it was just animals roaming around. Like, nah, it was peopling, living abundantly. Many different tribes and nations. But yeah, they spread out, conquered these people, and even though some of it wasn't forced, it still added on to the similarities, like I said. So yeah, right? So look, the wanderers which they had heard respecting the Incas made them accept him as their sovereign at the first summons. The Inca proceeded to Caravari, a country in which the people dwelt in separate and distant dwellings. There being no town, in its flat district there is but one mountain, which is like a quarter of a league in height and in the form of a pestle. When the petty chiefs found that it was the intention of the Inca to subdue them, they instantly constructed a fort upon this mountain, alright, the first people to fight back. The men supplying stones and the women the turf. Here they all entrenched themselves with their numerous families and as much provision as they could collect. The Inca summoned them persuasively and repeatedly, but they replied that he might go and conquer others, and they were resolved not to change their laws or manners of life. See, these people, right? These people here that the Incas came across were already on some like, nah, chill. We don't want to change our ways and customs. We don't want to adopt your style of living, right? That was something that was already being made note of. So like I said, right, there was already peopling, having enough sense to be able to say they don't want to change their ways of customs. Like I said, we're going to even learn that they even tried to conquer serpent worshipers, right? Other sun worshiping tribes, more ignorant races, mad different peoples. We're going to learn, we're going to see. Mayata Capac divided his army in 4 bodies and surrounded the mountain. When the Indians made several sallies with some success, the Inca's troops acted only on the defensive by his orders. They were, however, at least attacked vigorously, and the Caracas and others submitted. Fearful of being punished for their obstinacy, they went to the Inca to demand pardon. The children marched first and were followed by their mothers, and then the aged, the soldiers, the officers, and the Caracas with their hands bound and ropes to their necks, in acknowledgement that they merited death for presuming to oppose the descendants of the sun. This is what this sound like, right? Get down or lay down. Straight up Mongolian, Khan Gate, Khan, straight gate, Great Khan, straight up. Mongols had many different leaders too. Like I said, it's all of a part of a bloodline when we looking into it. Right, a lot of that I'm trying to find a part for y'all, but it's the similarity. It was right there. I should have had it pulled up, but it's alright though. It's alright. But straight up Mongolian, like that's something that you would know. Like if you know about history, then you know that this is something. This is a way that them folks. This is how they was moving over there. Right, this is how they was moving. This is how people were conforming to the Mongols. Right? Sorry, we don't mean to oppose. Right? And then they get adopted by they fall into the Mongol umbrella. Right? And then lose all track or all traces of their religion and their ways of customs. Right? They become followers of the sun. Right, to mark their extreme humility, they approached barefoot. The emperor received them seated upon his throne, surrounded by his officers. The Kurakas prostrated themselves before him, and addressing his majesty in terms of veneration and religious respect. Such as they are accustomed to use, they supplicated most humbly for pardon. But if it were his majesty's pleasure that they should suffer death, they should consider their lot not unhappy. If the lives of the soldiers who had acted under their authority should be granted, along with those of the aged men, the women, and the children. The Inca commanded that their hands should be untied and the ropes removed from their necks. I did not come hither, said the emperor, to deprive you of your lives or your property, but rather to enrich you and to teach you to live according to the laws of reason and of nature. To quit your idols and adore the sun as your benefactor and your God. Straight up, like I said, trying to convert them. Right, let's see if we can find this right here. Right, he was a conqueror. Genghis Khan was a conqueror. And I don't know, like maybe some of you guys have played this game, right? I spelled that all wrong. But Ghost of Tsushima, it's a video game. And in this video game, they make a lot of references to the Mongols, to the Khan. And their style, like the way they stepping, they telling folks like, listen, will you bow down to the Khan? If you bow down, we let you rock. Right? You can live freely, be happy, do whatever it is that you need to do. But the minute that you disobey, off with your head. That's how they was stepping. That's how they was stepping. So when we see this part right here, right? This is what he said. He did not come here to kill or deprive anybody. Nah. He came here to convert, right, and push their ways and customs. Follow the son, follow the father, because the father is the son of the son, and we worship the son. We want y'all to worship the son. We gonna put y'all under our banner. That was their goal, right? And look, therefore return to your dwellings and continue in the same power that you have hitherto enjoyed. There may you remain in health and obey laws which are for you your common and advantage. The Inca then permitted the Kurakas, in the name of all their people, to embrace his right knee in token of his protection and instable favor, as it was sacrilege to touch his person unless being one of his relations. 3 other provinces, warlike and rich in cattle, submitted to the government of the Incas, charmed with the reports that they had heard respecting his clemency. On his road to Cusco, the emperor made other conquests to the west. There was a nation who used poison against their enemies. It did not kill but disfigured the person and rendered life miserable. The Inca, to put an end to such inhumane custom, commanded that those who were known to be guilty should be roasted to death. Right? Regulating, getting things in order, getting things in check, cutting the grass, right? Cutting the grass, right? So you can reveal all the snakes, all of the potential threats to this big empire that they're trying to build here in South America, right? You got people here who use poison. So what they did, they said, you know what? Let's see, everybody that's a part of this, catch them and roast them. Right, we're gonna pack them up, get rid of them, right? Look, they were sought out, executed, and their dwellings and possessions laid waste, after which the crime was never repeated. The emperor pursued other conquests, and many provinces submitted. While he was encamped near the town called Hayuchu, he was informed that the Indians farther on had collected a number of troops to oppose him. Right, so you have people here planning to revolt, right? You know, revolts happening within the empire. They defended the passage across the river Hayuchu with 13,000 men. They even passed it and attacked the royal army. 6,000 were killed and the Peruvians lost 500. The rest of the enemy the next day presented themselves before the emperor's tent and on their knees and in tears implored his mercy, which was granted. And they returned to their dwellings. Like, you got people here folding. They are folding, right? Before the defeat of this Incan emperor, Mayata Capac. Folding. Like, in fear. And like, if y'all checked out the last one, I spoke about it. They said, some of these people said, like, when they encountered these Inca, they were like of giant stature, right? They're of swarthy giant stature, like super duper huge, right? And they got like pelts of animal skins and stuff like that, like stepping just like the Mongols, right? So you can only imagine like why people here, like, they're on their knees in tears, like in fear for their lives, in fear, right? All right, so if they were here to be peaceful, why are people on their knees and in tears, right? Like I said, Moors, whatever the case may be, man, all skin ain't kin. I'm not about to sit here and defend this version of conquest. It's based off blasphemy and violence. Right? Y'all gotta understand, man, when the Most High gave us life, He wanted us to live righteously. And it's nothing about making people cry and dispossessing them of their ways and customs. Righteous. No matter what it is. You know? But let's continue. On the report of his clemency, many towns of Characas submitted. The Inca then marched eastward to the country of the Antes and arrived in the valley now called Chucuipau, and peopled some towns in order to cultivate maize in that favorable soil and climate. Maize being a plant that years prior they weren't able to really use in that Siberian climate. So like I said, when we talking about these people being nomads and in hordes, they're moving around so that they can find some type of habitable land, right? Because even at this time, like, they couldn't stay in Siberia, right? They couldn't stay in Siberia because crops didn't grow abundantly. And like we learned, right, these tribes, these different tribes, you know, after breaking up, they spread out. They all spread it out. So right here in the Americas, they were able to cultivate maize. Now, you know, that's the bread of life right there. That's the evolution plant. That's what I call it, the evolution plant. Because whenever you got maize, you have agriculture. And then wherever you have agriculture, you have people abundance. You know, whenever you can flourish, that leads to new creations, right? New ideas, new things to cultivate using this maize. He proceeded eastward to the Great Snow Mountain, which is 30 leagues east of the Grand Road. when after an absence of 3 years, Mayata Capac returned to Cusco. After 2 or 3 years' repose, the Inca prepared to conquer some extensive provinces on the west. And to shorten his march, he made a bridge over the great river Apurimac of whites twisted together into 5 cables as thick as a man's body and stretched them from side to side so that it hung in the air, 200 paces long and more than 2 yards broad. Droves of loaded mules and cattle could pass over it. It is the admiration of posterity. Son built a bridge with his bare hands. He built a bridge, right? They say he made cables as thick as a man's body, right? Made cables as thick. How big of a and strong of a brother does he have to be able to make cables as big as a man's body, right? This is a testament to the strength and sheer size of what these people may be of, right? Like I said, when they saw these Incas, they were like giants to them, like really big and strong, or whatever the case may be. Similar to like the Khans, very similar. The Inca crossed with 12,000 experienced troops. When he arrived in the desert country of Cantinisu, he was impeded by a marsh, but in a few days to a stone causeway, 6 yards wide and 2 yards high, was constructed and proved very beneficial. Right, look, these bridges are common in Tibet and Bhutan, and they had the same kinds of bridges in Mexico. Right, correlations, Tibet and Bhutan, that's over there in Asia. And then Mexico, right, being one of these lands that these Tartarian nations landed on or discovered, or I don't even want to say discovered, like colonized. Let's say the colonized, right? And then I even learned recently, like the Zapotec. The Zapotec civilization, right? I even learned recently that they come from Japhet, right? That they could come from Japhet. And so if they talking like they come from Japhet, we can instantly make that connection to the Mongols. Instantly. I wish I could find the article for y'all. I should have had it pulled up. There's a lot of different things that I was just discovering when I was like doing the research on this stuff, and it's just like, wow, bro, it's blowing my mind. Constantly blowing my mind, constantly. But yeah, they had the same bridges in Tibet, Bhutan, and they had the same bridges in Mexico. That bridge that Mayata Capac built with his bare hands, yeah, you could find them in 3 different places. 2 in Asia and 1 over here in the Americas. But yeah, so they said the bridge proved very beneficial to future ages, so they used it for many years to come. The Inca marched forward, and the Rion he thus acquired enabled him to add his own crown. The Inca marched forward, and the Rion he thus acquired enabled him to add his own crown all the country as far as the valley of Arequipa. This campaign consumed 3 years. The emperor returned to Cusco, where he died, full of prosperity and glory. The length of his reign is uncertain. He was succeeded by his eldest son, born of Mamacuca, his wife and sister. They continued the same process, right? Get your sister, make that your wife, and then pass on the bloodline, right? He had many other sons and daughters, legitimate and illegitimate. When Mayata Capac reduced to obedience the town of Tiahuanaca near Lake Chuhutu by Titicaca, there was found in it a kind of hillock made by the hands of man. a high hillock, a mound made by the hands of man. The foundation was of immense masses of stone, well cemented to prevent the prodigious terraces from falling upon each other. At some distance, there were 2 stone giants with garments that reached the ground and a cap on the head. They appeared defaced by time. They said they found 2 stone giants near the town of Tiahuanaca, right? They found a mound in Tiahuanaca. They found a mound and 2 stone giants that were defaced by time. They found relics that were there that existed long before their arrival. That's what I'm talking about. The nitty gritty. They found relics there long before their arrival. So this is how you know they were not the ones. Aboriginal to South America. It's impossible talking like this. Right, there were peoples there who peopled that land. Because who else built this? Right, there was also a long wall made of stone so large that it's difficult to imagine how they were brought thither or they were brought there. There are neither rocks nor quarries in the neighborhood. In another place, there were many extraordinary buildings, among which were grandes portes, many quiet entire, the 4 corners of each consisting of a single stone. Almost all of them rested upon other stones of incredible magnitude, some being 30 feet long, 15 feet wide, and 6 feet thick. They're finding buildings, right? Probably antediluvian, probably, right? But built by the peoples who were there long ago. Who could these peoples have been? Right, so I'm pretty sure this might be a news flash for some people, but no. Right, if you got children that's learning about the Incas in school, correct them right now, because they not even from America. When we talking about American history, we got to talk about people who are from America. Right, we got to be straight up. Copper colored or not, man, we got to be real. Right, who were the builders of these things that were here before they arrived? Right, it is impossible to conceive by what means these stones have been cut. There is a hall 45 feet by 22. That's like the temples at Cusco. There are stones with representations of men and women cut upon them, some sitting, others with vases in their hands as if to drink, and some of as if crossing a rivulet, and statues of women with children at the breast. Some are so well executed as to appear quiet and natural. The buildings seem as if they had never been finished. The Indians knew nothing of their origins, so who were the builders? Huh? Ancient America, true old world, bro. Because if the Indians don't know, then that means they most likely who don't know who dwelt before and don't come from who dwelt before, because they don't know the origin. So who could these people have been? Very, very interesting. Something worth looking into, because whoever these people have been, those are the people who are the Aborigines of South America, right? We could chalk them up with the Sopak, right? The peoples that are aboriginal to the Yucatan. Now we learning nitty gritty, right? Like I said, this is what make all this stuff interesting, because this comes with the conquest of these different Incan rulers, right? This comes with their conquests, these copper-colored Incan rulers, right? So who else we got? We got Capac Yupanqui. Capac Yupanqui. He settled some sanguinary disputes between powerful native chiefs, the Characas, submitted to him. So he was settling beef. And then we got Inca Roca, the son of Capac Yuan Puqui. He completed the conquest of the Characas provinces and added about 50 leagues of territory to his empire. He built schools for the education of the princes. It was a saying of this Inca that if there be anything in this lower world which we might adore, it is a wise and virtuous man who surpasses all other objects in dignity. But how can we pay divine honors to one who is born in tears, who is in a daily state of change, who arrived but is yesterday, and who is not exempt from death, perhaps tomorrow? And then Inca Roca was succeeded by his son. So Inca Roca, he built schools, and he was the one who further expanded the territory, right? He completed the Characas conquest, right? The conquest of the Characas provinces, and extended the Incan dominion, putting more people under the banner, making more people become or convert to sun worship, right? And this is why you have, like I said, this is why you have a lot of this stuff in South America. That's why they have a lot of this stuff in South America. All right, sis, have a good night. You know, I hope you feel better in the morning. But all of these temples of the sun, the sun worshippers over there in Natchez, right? You know, if you Google the religion of the Natchez folks, you learn that they are sun worshippers. And same thing with some of the tribes in Florida. Even funnier though, too, we're gonna learn later on in this book right here that a lot of them, these people, they wore turbans, right? They wore turbans or caps on their heads, right? These Incas, right? Or even these folks in Tolomeco or Natchez, they wore caps on their heads. So even them, right? Like I said, copper colored peoples. What's the thing with these turbans, right? What does that represent? Right? It's crazy to think about it too, but can we connect this? Can we truly connect this, right? To like the ancient tribes of the old world. That would be mind-blowing. Because if we're looking at this stuff on a timeline scale, you know, it wasn't that long ago. Especially if you got people today who can still tell you, like from Peru, who could tell you about Atahualpa. Right? People in America can't even tell you about who the first president was, right? They could tell you that it was George Washington, but that's it. Right? They can't give you no backstory. They don't know nothing about Dwight D. Eisenhower. They don't know nothing about majority. They don't even know nothing about Richard Nixon. They don't know nothing about him. Right? They don't know. I don't even know a lot about a lot of our presidents. I'm gonna be honest. But people over there can still tell you about Atahualpa. So that's how long, right? I mean, that's how recent we could say this stuff is, and that's how long their ways and customs have dominated over the people of Peru until this day. Let's continue though. It was a saying of this Inca that if there by anything in this lower world which we might adore, it is a wise and virtuous man who surpasses all other objects in dignity. But how can we pay divine honors to one who is born in tears, who is in a daily state of change, who arrived but is yesterday, and who is not exempt from death, perhaps tomorrow? And like I said, Inca Roca was succeeded by his son, who was Yahor Huacaq, so named from his having wept tears of blood in his infancy, and which were deemed a presage of his misfortunes. The eldest son of this Inca, whose name is not known, was a turbulent, ungovernable character. The father, endeavoring in vain to reclaim him from his vicious career, was necessitated to banish him. And at the age of 19, he was sent to the large park called Chita, where the cattle destined for the service of the sun were fed on the rich pasture. And he passed 3 years as a shepherd, in common with the rest, in tending the sacred flocks. The Inca intention was to live without wars and to reclaim his unruly son. Otherwise, to appoint another of his children heir to the empire. The emperor's attention was given to repairing the aqueducts, public roads, palaces, and to govern his subjects in justice. And on one day, his son suddenly appeared at the palace. The Inca commanded him to return to the park from whence he came, or threatened him with immediate death for disobedience. The prince replied that he had come to the palace by the express orders of another Inca, as great his father, to communicate information of the utmost importance, but that if he were not permitted to speak, he would return and relate the reception he had met with. So, Yahur Hakak, right? His son met with another Inca, and this was a shock to the father, because this is like two different groups or two different peoples of the same dominion, not knowing that they exist. And then the son speaking with the other, coming back to the father, letting him know that he came to speak with his pops on behalf of the other Inca. Right? So we can see sort of kinda the roots of civil war amongst the Inca. We're going to talk about it a little bit later though, but let's continue. The astonished monarch, wishing to know who he had the presumption to compare him with, and to send his son with such a message, desired him to explain. "My lord," said he, while I was reposing in the shade of a rock in the park at noon this very day, and unconscious whether sleeping or awake, a strange looking man with a long beard and a garment which covered him to his feet, and leading with a leash an animal such as I have never seen, advanced towards me and said, 'My nephew, I am a descendant of the son and brother of Mongol Capac and of his wife Koyamama Oelo. My name is Virachocha. I am deputed by the son to command you to inform your father that the provinces of Chinchahuasu are in arms to dethrone him and to destroy Cusco. Tell him to beware, and as for you, do not fear to act like one becoming the majesty of your descent, and then you may rely on my support in your adversity.' Having spoken these words, the phantom vanished." He's saying that this dude, this man who popped up, was a phantom. But like I said, these are the roots of civil war. Pay attention. We're going to continue. So basically, at this point now, they're getting word, or basically a prophecy, that at some point Cusco was going to be destroyed. There's a prophecy that Cusco was going to be destroyed, the great Incan capital, Cusco. They're getting prophecy that it was going to be destroyed. Now, it's two ways that this empire fell, right? And that's the invasion of the Spaniard, invasions from other tribes, and civil war from within. This prophecy spoke on these specific events that's going to transpire further down the line. The father, who hated this son, reproached him with having invented this fable and sent him back to the park. The weak monarch, not being roused from his apathy, his enemies, relying on his pacifist character, massacred his governors in those provinces and set out in full march with 40,000 men for Cusco. The Inca, with the inhabitants, abandoned the city. His son, now assuming the command, defeated the rebels, killing 22,000, and with the loss of 8,000 of his own troops. He deposed his father and built a fine palace with parks, gardens, woods, fish ponds, wild beasts for his residence at Mayuna, 5 leagues from Cusco. Right now, on to the last son. Viracocha, so named from the apparition, was an enterprising emperor. Among magnificent works, he caused the aqueduct to be made, 120 leagues long and 12 feet deep, to convey the famous mountain springs which are between Parku and Picuí to the Rucana for the purpose of watering the pastures, which are only about 50 miles abroad, but extend nearly the length of Peru. The sovereign of Tucumán or Tucumán voluntarily became tributary. Viracocha extended his conquest on the east to the Andes, and on the west to the sea, and on the south to the desert of Chile. On the north, all rebels submitted. He, Viracocha, further expanded the empire even well, right? Putting other nations and other peoples under the Inca dominion. After a long and glorious reign, he was succeeded by his son, born of the fair queen Mamaruntu, right? Keeping it in the same blood. This being the son, Pachacutec, had an army of 50,000 men, and he made conquests of countries extending about 130 leagues of latitude, and the rest of those people between the mountains and the ocean. He founded schools and erected several palaces, temples, and aqueducts. He had a very long reign and left upwards of 300 children by his concubines. He had 300 children. Talking about leaving it in the bloodline. 300 children. Pachacutec. 300 children. What was he? The 11th Inca? The 11th Inca or the 9th Inca? The 9th Inca emperor? 300 children, right? Pachacutec made many new laws and regulations. He was severely just and was esteemed a wise monarch. The following were some of his patologems. He who envies the wise and good is like the spider who sucks poison from the finest flowers. Drunkenness and anger admit of reformation, but folly is incurable. He who kills another without just cause condemns himself to death. A noble and generous heart is known by the patience with which it supports misfortune. How ridiculous is he who is not able to count by quipos and yet pretend to number the stars. Right, and then we got Yupanqui, son of Pachacutec. But Pachacutec, though, seemed like he was a respectable man with some type of morals. Right, so these are the emperors dwelling within this Inca rule. Right, he founded schools and erected several palaces, temples, and aqueducts. These same palaces, like I said, the ones you see in Tolomeco. The schools to teach the sun worship, right? To continue to indoctrinate the nations moving forward. That's the point of building the schools. So these dudes, they knew what they was doing. They knew what they was doing, that's for sure. Can't take it away from them. But they knew that was their goal, to colonize the people. And this, it makes me think, man. It makes me think when Charles V linked up with the Inca. Charles V, he could have been a Moor. Right? He could have been a black man. When he linked up with the Inca, maybe it's some history there that they leaving out. Maybe these dudes already knew about each other. All right, what else we got? So yeah, Yupanqui, son of Pachacutec, with the army of 10,000 men, invaded the countries on the east side of the snow-capped Cordilleras. The woods and morasses were such great impediments that during 2 years he cut down a prodigious number of trees and made many balsas. And what is a balsas? Right, a balsas is a kind of raft made of beams which sails, tacks, and works with contrary winds by means of boards 3 or 4 years long and half a yard broad, placed vertically at the head and stern between the main beams. By pushing some of them deep in the water and raising others, they bear away, luff up, tack, lay to, and etc. All right, so we see that a balsas is like a ship or a little boat. It's a raft. And they put an army on this raft. And this helped them travel down the Great River. Amarayu Amaya. The Chun-Chus, whose skins are spotted from the great heat of the sun, leprosy, right? The curse, that's the curse. We got it here in South America. Were subdued and paid tribute in apes, parrots, wax, honey, and other produce of their country. They were permitted to people a town near Tono, 26 leagues from Cusco. Pursuing their conquest eastward into the country of Muzus, the troops were harassed and diminished to 1,000 men. The natives would not submit but accepted the friendship and alliance of the Inca without paying any tribute, and the troops all remained and intermarried with the daughters of the Muzus. So they were intermarrying with other tribes too. Intermarrying, thus pushing on that royal bloodline even further, right? The royalty in this case going throughout the tribes. This is kind of what builds unity and what sets the ground for other tribes to accept the conversion to the sun worship. That's what that did. It built the foundations for the tribes to accept the conversion to the sun worship. All right. What else we got? In their territory, the River Plata is 6 leagues wide, and the Indians are 2 days in crossing with their canoes. Let's see if we can see who these Muzus are. Who are these people? Let's see what the internet tells us. Oh, okay. Oh, we got the word Moses. Daughters of the Moses. Could that be? Nah, that's a reach. We know that's a reach, but yeah. In their territory, the River Plata is 6 leagues wide, and the Indians are 2 days in crossing with their canoes. They could cross the canoes in 2 days with their canoes. These canoes that everybody think is small, right? Just imagine what size canoes they had to build dealing with these Inca men. Plus, on top of that, the Incas had all the gold. They had all the gold. Where the gold coming from? Right? They the golden horde, right? Let's not forget they merchants too. The Incas general with 10,000 troops, which were reinforced with 40,000 more, invaded the countries to the south, subdued Conquibo, and to the river Mauli. Continuing their conquest southward, beyond the Mauli, they were opposed by an army of 18 or 20,000 brave warriors like Chilean Indians. So they fought with people of Chile, the inhabitants of Chile. 3 battles ensued, in which more than half of the soldiers in each army were slain, and nearly all the rest wounded. On the 4th day, the generals of the Inca held a council of war and resolved on being contended with the river Mauli as the boundary, and fortresses was erected as a barrier. This campaign had consumed 6 years. They fought with these people for 6 years. These more ignorant nations able to put up a fight against the Inca. These more ignorant aboriginal nations of America able to put up a fight against the Inca. That's what that is. Right? This emperor founded the citadel of Cusco, remarkable for the nice adjustment and monstrous size of the stones. He founded the citadel of Cusco. He had extended the empire northward 40 leagues from Chinchu to Chimu, and southward 260 leagues. Yupanaqui was by universal consent surnamed the Charitable. He left a great number of children by his concubines, and after a happy and glorious reign, was succeeded by his lawful son, Tupac Yupanqui. Tupac Yupanqui. So, Yupanqui, and let's get back to his first name. Oh, just Yupanqui, the son of Pachacuetec, right? He founded the citadel of Cusco. So he was the founder. And then he had a son who also was under this Incan royal bloodline. And after the year passed and the ceremonies observed on the death of his Inca, his father, employed 4 years in visiting his dominions, as was the custom. He then raised 40,000 men to maintain the conquest of his predecessors. To maintain, right? They want to keep it going. To maintain, keep it flowing. Let's keep it moving. Let's keep growing this magnificent empire that we got, right? Leaving a governor at Cusco, the emperor proceeded to Cajamarca in order to subdue the province of Chacayapuyas, which contained 40,000 inhabitants. The men are very brave and the women extremely beautiful. They worship chiefly the condor and serpents. They worship chiefly the condor and the serpents. The men are very brave and the women are extremely beautiful. Followers of the great serpent. Right? And if we talking in terms of what's right and what's wrong, let's just say it, man. These followers of Moses. Right? Serpent worship. Quetzalcoatl. Like I said, not everybody was following the sun worship, and this was the type of stuff that the sun worshipers, they ain't like. You know, sun worshipers and serpent worshipers were going to war all over the Americas, man. And we learn about this in the Mound Builders book. Right? So look what it say. In warfare, the men are remarkable for their dexterous use of the sling. It was necessary to begin by reducing a large and warlike province called Hakarachuku, where the natives had images of serpents before which they knelt in adoration. Images of serpents, Quetzalcoatl, the serpent worship. Right, that's where they started though. They reduced the large and warlike province where these serpent worshippers were. That's how they started the conquest on the people of Chacayapuyas. It required the whole summer to force them to submit. 2 battles were fought and the strong passes were secured. When the inhabitants consented to adopt the worship or the sun, the worship of the sun, converting back and forth. Another thing that we've been seeing, even when we go through the ancient mound builders book, it's evident. That stuff is evident. It's evident. Right? Aqueducts and other improvements were introduced in this province where much rain falls. Right, and then another thing we could do too is going back to this is we could look at this as Shem's descendants and Japheth's descendants having a full-on fist fight. Right, that's what we could look at it as, right? Going to war. Same stuff that was happening over there in the Middle East and Asia, whatever the case may be, these Bible stories, same stuff happening here in the Americas. And some of it happening as far as back as to 1100 AD, 1000 AD, 900 AD, and before Christ. Going on, man. This is ancient America, the true old world. the Inca received a reinforcement of 20,000 troops and marched towards the Chapullas. He summoned them to submit, but received for answer that they would defend their liberty with their lives. They will die for what they stand for. They are dying for what they stand for. Right? In America, man, these serpent worshippers, the Chachas, as they are still called, built many forts on the heights of the mountains and blocked up the passes. The Inca sent forward 300 chosen men to make discoveries, but they were, every one of them, lost in the snow on the mountain Chiramac, Cuca. The Inca overcame all the difficulties, arrived at Cajamarquilla, and after vanquishing the Chachas, they submitted to his law. The two provinces of Casca Yunca and Huanca Pampa, the inhabitants of which were in the most barbarous state of savage life, going naked and eating human flesh, were reduced to obedience in the arts of civil life. Something else to make note of. Right? Something else to make note of. The Inca converting even the beast-like tribes of South America. The most beast-like. Folks was out here going naked, eating human flesh. Beast-like. And they were converted and were taught obedience in the arts of civil life. They went from apes to walking up straight. They were prohibited from cannibalism under pain of entire extirpation, which means to exterminate, to destroy, to exterminate. Right? If they continued, the Inca were going to exterminate them. Several years were consumed in conquering the provinces of Casa, Ayahuasca, and Calua, the natives of which lived under civil governors. They were very brave and confederated in defense of their liberty. In one of the battles, the Inca lost 8,000 men. Right, some of these provinces, right, where they had just different tribes or different peoples living in, right, living in different governments. Going to war with the Incas because the Incas are pushing the expansion of and growth of their empire, and this is going into their lands. We just learned in one there was flesh eaters, and then in one you had serpent worship. Ancient America. Tupac Yupan Kui now passed some years in visiting his empire, building palaces, fortresses, aqueducts, temples in honors of the sun, and houses for the chosen virgins. He formed high roads and completed the fortifications of Cusco. The emperor now proceeded to the conquest of Chinich Hasyuyu and Huánuco, remarkable for fertile land and pure air. Here he built another temple of the sun and a house for the virgins, which were attended and served by above 20,000 men. So everywhere the land was fertile, they would erect a temple of the sun. They would erect a temple of the sun, a temple of sun worship. Right? That's where the inhabitants, after converting, this is where they all congregate in at these temples worshiping the sun. So when we see those stories, when they talking about folks being brought up to the pyramids, their hearts being ripped out and then put up to the sun and stuff like that, that's all real stuff. But it was brought over here by the Tartarian races. They brought that over here to the Americas. And the actions are being displayed in the Aztecs and the Incas, because you can draw a connection amongst all of these people. Right? Look what they say. The next year, the Inca prepared for the conquest of the great province of the Canarians. The people tie their hair in a knot upon the top of their head and go nearly naked. His Majesty proceeded through the country called Pauta, famous for the exquisite fruit so named. Here the natives on the birth of an infant tie board upon the forehead to another behind the neck, and thus they remain for 3 years to flatten the head, practicing the flattening of the head. Right, so can we even contribute this? Right, can we even contribute this type of stuff to being Aboriginal to America, right? Because a lot of the Aztecs and these Incas or Peruvians adopted these things. They adopted these styles, and we find this in many different parts of the Americas. I'm gonna be bringing another book to the channel. I mean, we already brought it to the channel, but we're gonna be going back to the races of man, and we're gonna talk about what we finding over there in the West Coast. And we got this head flattening practice all over there. Many different races and nations, and we're gonna also talk about the Queen Khalifa connection. Right, leaving proper persons to govern the Pautas, the Inca sent to summon the Canarians to submit. They consented, and a magnificent temple was built with the house, as usual for the virgins of the sun. At Tumipampa, the walls of the royal temples and chambers were ornamented by the Inca's son, Hayuna Capac, with animals, plants, and flowers made to represent nature of gold, silver, emeralds, turquoises, and other jewels. These people were so attached to their new masters that they gave all their riches to adorn the temples and the palaces. Right after these temples of the sun were erected, people were so flabbergasted, right? They like, yo, we gotta give tribute to all of them. These are idols, right? These are our idols. They building all of these magnificent temples, right? Getting the people, the inhabitants of the land to congregate in the setting, whatever the case may be. They worshiping. Tupac Yupanqui returned to Cusco, where he remained some years, governing his empire with wisdom and mildness. Ambition made him again advance to the confines of Tumipampa with a fine army. Here he conquered about 50 leagues of territory, which reached the borders of the kingdom of Quito. The natives here were barbarous, and the country was barren. The people of the palace, now called Puerto Viejo, ancient port, dispatched the ambassador with the presents and submission as vassals. The Incas sent officers and prosperous persons to govern them. But after receiving instruction in religion and agriculture, they massacred all the Incas. They massacred all of the Incas' establishment without exception. Yupanqui did not find it convenient at present to revenge this injustice. After reposing a few years at Cusco, the emperor set out to conquer Quito, which was 70 leagues in length and 30 in breadth. This region was fertile and populous. He arrived at Tumipampa with 40,000 troops and summoned the king to submit his power. The sovereign, whose name was Quito, replied haughtily that he preferred the worship of his ancestors, which was the trees and wild animals that supplied his subjects with fuel and food. So look, we got tree and wild animal worship. And they refused the sun worship of the Inca. So to refuse the sun worship of Inca, if we going back on it, that's like to refuse the wishes of Mongol Capac. And they wasn't trying to do that. Mongol Capac was their Genghis Khan. Mongol Capac said, keep the tribes together. So that's what they were hell bent on standing on. And this is why conquest was so important to them. Because if they could conquer everybody, then there will be no one left to oppose. And if there's no one left to oppose, then there's no one to disrupt this royal bloodline. After a conquest of 2 years in which many were slain on both sides in the well-defended passes and mountains, the Inca sent for his eldest son, Huayna Capac, who was then 20 years of age. He arrived with 12,000 troops, and the emperor returned to Cusco. After an effort of 3 years to defend himself, the king of Quito expired in despair. The generals submitted to the young prince, who loaded them with presents, built a temple, and endowed it with the usual establishment. Like I said, after they find land, after they conquer, they build and erect their temple. It's like saying, yeah, this is mine now. Sort of like the Mongols. It's like saying, this is mine now. Right after easy conquest of the savages of Quilancena, who pierced the cartilage between the nostrils and hanged thereon an ornament of gold, silver, or copper, we find this here in America as well. People stabbing themselves with bones and stuff. Huayna Capac proceeded to the province of Pasto, where the people are very different but equally barbarous. Upon flesh being offered them, they replied that they were not dogs. Right? They tried to offer them flesh. Right? The Incas tried to offer them flesh as a peace offering. Governors were left to teach them the arts of civil life and to force them to free themselves from the vermin which devoured them. Basically saying that their ways of life is actively possessing them to be barbarous, and that if they don't worship the sun, then they are savages. Proceeding forward, the prince subdued the province of Ataluva, where the natives were more warlike and civilized. He then entered the great province of Carinenque, the inhabitants of which worship lions, tigers, and large serpents, to which they sacrifice the heart and blood of their captives in war, the flesh of whom they devoured. Right? Worship of lions, tigers, and serpents. Right? The symbols. What nations? Right? Let's check this out. What nations uses lions and tigers? We got Africa, India, Russia, China, and Southeast Asia. Right? Tartarian as well. But these people using those animals as well, of those lands as well. Interesting. Whoa, that's where they roam. Sorry. Let's check this out. The Achaemenid Empire. Persians. Ancient Persia. The Assyrians. The Romans. Now we into it. The Persians and the Babylonians. So are these people also of those empires? Right? Because we know blood sacrifices was going on in each of these empires here as well. Right? The lion and sun. This is in the Persian Empire. The lion and sun symbol was adopted by Persian empires, including the Parthian and Sasanian dynasties. And then in the Babylonian Empire, the Ishtar Gate constructed by Babylonian King Nebuchadnezzar featured lion sculptures. So could these people, what? Look, this is why ancient America, the true old world, I keep telling y'all. They were warlike and civilized, these natives of this land. They were civilized. Where they get their civilization from? We got to think about it, man. Things that make you think. You got to think about it. These people were reduced to obedience, but gave their old customs with reluctance. This was the most northern province added to the kingdom of Quito. In the meanwhile, Tupac Yupan Kui was assiduous in completing the fortifications of Cusco, in which 20,000 men were constantly employed. Every 3 years, governors were sent to visit the conquest in Chile and to present the chief people with a supply of clothing. The caciques, chiefs, in return sent the Inca a quantity of gold, feathers, and curiosities, right? In exchange for clothes. They were exchanging some of their commodities that were already here in America, right? The gold, the exotic feathers, and other things of marvelous marvel, right? Were already here in America. The prince arrived at Cusco and received his father's commendations for the success of his exploits in Quito. He now married his young sister Rava Oelo, not having any progeny by his first wife and sister Pailo Huaco, and being desirous to have children, both of these paternal and maternal branches. He likewise married his niece Mama Runtu. Just to keep the bloodline going, he went down to his niece. Just to keep the bloodline going. I'm telling y'all, these things are all too similar. When you're looking at the Incan Empire, you got to think about it. Where are they getting these customs from? It's not like they coming over here and everybody just adopting this stuff. Everything has an origin. Everything has an origin. They are known as the Inca. But these folks are the Tarter, the Tartars, right? They're building these temples. Tartars were builders. They erect a temple everywhere they go. It's not like they building the mounds like how a lot of tribes did. No, they are building temples. Where did their knowledge of temple building come from? If they're not from America. The emperor at length, feeling the approach of death, gave orders that his children, of whom there were upwards of 200, should come into his presence to hear his last injunctions. He recommended them by living in peace and justice to prove themselves true children of the sun. He commanded his successor to pursue the conquest of the barbarous nations in imitation of his predecessors, and to chastise the traitors of Puerto Viejo and Huancavelitas, that the ingratitude of those savages might not, if unpunished, prove a pernicious example to others. Told y'all. They wanted to conquer, right, just so that they would have nobody there to intrude or stop them from pursuing the conquest that Mongol Capac left for them, to convert all of the people into sun worship and to conquer the land. Right? So look, thus died this excellent monarch. He passed away. His grateful subjects rewarded his noble actions and benevolent heart with the title of Tupac Yaya, or Resplendent Father. The deceased emperor's body was embalmed with solemn ceremonies and with so much art that it appeared as if it was still alive. When seen by Vega in the year 1559, among other maxims of this Inca, he said, "Avarice and ambition, like other passions, have no bounds or of moderation. The first unfits a man for the government of his own family and for any public employment. The second renders the understanding not susceptible of the counsels of the wise and virtuous." Right? 12, we got Honya Kapak. Right? And we're going to pick up on this one, right, in the next one, because it's getting late. Extremely late, you know. I was supposed to jump on this earlier, but Honya Kapak, right, the son of Tupac, or the representative father, Tupac Yaya, or Yuan Pui, Honya Kapak, the son of him. The story gets interesting once we start going into this right here, right? Because now we start seeing, like I told y'all, the foundations or the sequence of events that lead up to the civil war amongst the Inca, right? Honya Kapak, remember his name, because this story gets interesting just as we enter that part, just as we enter this part, right? I'm telling y'all, man, we gonna make these connections all day, right? Tartarian races, these swarthy Tartarian races here in the Americas. I told y'all, we're gonna be bringing up way more facts, right, regarding these peoples and the connections that we can make with the Inca to their many tribes. So we just learned a lot from this one. You know, we learned about the different emperors, the different rulers, how they ruled, their style of ruling, and the different people that they encountered while they were spreading out their conquests, right? And even with the spreading of their conquests, we can easily connect it back to the Mongols. The Mongols, the hordes, right? The Tartars, their spread, and how they kept it in the family bloodline. And like I said, their spread, how they spread all over, let's just say Eurasia, and had all those different peoples under their banner. It's very, very similar. It is very, very, very similar. Right, like I said, we're going to keep making these connections, man. I want y'all to tune into the next one, man. We're going live next Sunday. We're going to go crazy. We're going to drop a banger, man. We're going to drop a banger. I ain't going to lie. I got some smoke coming for y'all. I ain't going to lie. Right, we're going to go back into this story. Learning about this, man, is interesting because in the history that we were taught, we learn about the Inca, but we don't learn that they are not from America. Like, as far as I'm concerned, I learned that the Inca was a part of American history. And even though they are not of the Aboriginal tribes of the Americas. Therefore, they are part of the peoples who, let's say, whitewashed the history or altered the history. Right? The history now of South America is now told from an Incan perspective. We don't know nothing about the other tribes that dwelt before. Right? And that was because of their conquest. That was because of their conquest. And it's just like with the Mongols. Right? We don't know much about the many different tribes dwelling over there in Siberia. The many different tribes dwelling over there in Siberia. We don't know much. We know that it's Siberians that migrated here to the Americas that make up the Native American population. But we don't know much. Right? It's all lost history. And this is why we talk about it, because we want to bring this stuff to light. Like I said, man, it's a Copper Color King. Make sure y'all tune in next week. We're going to drop another banger. Going live Sunday. Got that fire for your soul, man. I love y'all. Thank for supporting. I thank you for supporting. And like I said, tune into the next one. Peace. We out.